So it's official. The Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks will meet in the first round in a 4v5 matchup. And usually in the playoffs, the 4v5 matchup is a lot of the times the most even matchup, and 9 times out of 10 it will be a close and good series. I think this is exactly what this series will be. So in today's video, I'll be discussing who I think will win this series. The way it's going to work is I'm going to give some reasons to why I think Atlanta can win and some reasons to why I think New York could win. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to conclude to who I think will actually win the series. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow, and subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and help reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'm really close, and comment on this video and start a conversation with me as I do respond to all comments, and play that intro. To start the video off, I'm going to give a reason to why New York can win the series, and the biggest reason why New York can win the series is simply because of the fact that the Knicks are one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. As in the regular season, they were the 3rd best defensive team in the league, and they ranked 1st in opponents' points per game. So clearly the Knicks are one of the greatest defensive teams in the league right now, and this will be huge for them in a series, especially against the Hawks, since Atlanta is one of the best offensive teams in the league, as their offense has a bunch of ball movement and they have a bunch of offensive players who can simply get buckets. Against an offense this great, when you're the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference, maybe outside of only the Philadelphia 76ers, it's nearly a perfect matchup, because you can assume that the Atlanta Hawks won't absolutely torch the Knicks like they would to a terrible defensive team, which definitely increases the Knicks' chance of winning. The Hawks' best player is Trae Young, and the Knicks have some solid defenders to put on him, and guys like Reggie Bullock, Alfred Payton, or even RJ Barrett at times. I think there's a legitimate chance that Trae Young struggles in this series because he's never been in the postseason, so we haven't ever seen him at the postseason, and on top of that, he's going to be going against one of the best defenses in the entire league. And also, historically, we've just seen a lot of guards who defend on fouls and who are smaller typically underperform in the postseason at times. Not saying it's for sure gonna happen, but I think there's a legitimate chance that it does happen. The Hawks have a bunch of good perimeter scorers, and the Knicks have a bunch of good perimeter defenders, as well as a good defensive scheme. So in some of these games, we will see some defensive clinics from the Knicks, and if you can play defense as well as they can in a series as close as this, it's definitely a huge advantage. The first reason I think the Atlanta Hawks can win this series is simply because the Hawks are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, and if you can score the ball as well as the Hawks can, there is a legitimate chance you can win the series. No matter how good the defense is, if you can just hit any of your 3-pointers and constantly get to the basket, there's literally nothing that can stop you. And during the regular season, the Hawks were ranked as the 8th best offensive team, but in the postseason, I think they will play fantastic since they're now basically healthy, and in the regular season they weren't really healthy. And this is a Hawks team that might have the best depth in the entire league, since it's a roster that has so much guys who deserve quality minutes, and so much guys who can play a vital role, and so much guys that can hit 3-pointers and get buckets. As we know, they have Trae Young, who's an amazing offensive player, as he drives a lot of attention from the defense and makes plays for others, and he can shoot from half court just like Steph Curry. They have John Collins, a secondary scorer who can score 20 points and 10 rebounds consistently. But what makes this Hawks team is how much shooters they have, as they have guys like Solomon Hill, Trae Young, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, Lou Williams, Kevin Huerter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Tony Snell, and others. So if this team catches on fire, there can be games where they absolutely wipe the Knicks. If a team is this amazing on the offensive side of the floor, they definitely can win a series. And if the Hawks win, it won't be because of their defense, it will be because of their offense. The second reason the New York Knicks can beat the Atlanta Hawks is the fact that the Knicks are one of the best coach teams in the league, as in my opinion, they have the guy who I think should win the Coach of the Year in Tom Thibodeau. And I think he will absolutely show out in this series with great adjustments and great defensive plans. By no means is the Hawks coach and Nate McMillan a terrible coach, as I actually have him in my top 4 candidates for the Coach of the Year, but I think in a series like this, I would give the advantage to Tom Thibodeau simply because he's a more more experienced coach, and in previous years with the Pacers, we've seen them disappoint, and it hasn't been fully McMillan's fault, but some of the blame definitely has to go to him. So we can't act like there's not a 100% chance that he'll be great in this postseason as he was in the regular season. So if the Knicks win this series, I think Tom Thibodeau will be a huge reason why, and I honestly expect them to have the superior coach in the series. And whoever has the best coach in the series can at times make or break who wins the series, especially in a series that is this close. The second reason I believe the Atlanta Hawks can beat the New York Knicks is simply because of the fact that the Knicks are one of the worst offensive teams in the entire NBA, and they arguably have the worst offensive team in the playoffs right now, which shows how bad they are on offense, as they rank 23rd in offensive rating in the regular season, which is definitely far from ideal, and in the postseason, historically terrible offensive teams get even worse in the playoffs since defenses have more time to focus on them. And I think there can be some games where the Knicks look absolutely horrible on offense, and I'm saying this while the Hawks aren't even an amazing defense, as Atlanta was actually the 21st ranked defense in the league during the regular season, which is below average, but I still think they can give the Knicks some problems on offense. And if one game the Knicks aren't hitting their three-pointers, or RJ Barrett and Julius Randle have a bad game, I don't think the Knicks will win. And if I'm being honest, this might be a bold prediction, but I think RJ Barrett will really struggle in the series because he seems like a player who will just not do good in the playoffs because he's very inconsistent and a streaky player, and he's the second best offensive player on this team, so that means Atlanta will definitely have a game plan for him. I also can see Julius Randle struggling since we haven't ever seen him in a postseason setting like this, and his playstyle is somewhat similar to a playstyle that I think would struggle in the postseason, and I would bet all my money on them struggling, but I think there will be some bad games from them both, and if those two struggle in the series as a whole, New York will win the series. I mean, they will lose the series. The third reason I believe the New York Knicks can beat the Atlanta Hawks is the fact that New York is a team that really plays hard. As we know, they're not just a good defensive team because of their talent, they play very hard and they never give up, and in the postseason, not giving up is way more maxified, because there will be stretches in the game where the Knicks will go down 10 to 15 points, especially against this explosive Atlanta offense, but the fact that the Knicks are a roster that has the culture to never give up and just keep playing as hard as they can makes me believe that they will stay in games despite them not being amazing on offense. The postseason is a lot of times determined by grittiness and hunger from the team. Whoever wants it more often wins the series. And this series is very close, and I think New York will show that they want it more and just be more physical and stuff. And that could definitely help them win the series. It's just a question of whether or not Atlanta might simply just outplay them. But one thing that's for sure is that New York will not go out without a fight. The third reason I believe the Atlanta Hawks can beat the New York Knicks is simply because in a series like this, there definitely will be some close games that go down to the wire, and in my opinion, I have more faith in Atlanta's players to finish and close out games in the clutch, and this is mainly because they have Trae Young, who's a guy who can hit big and clutch shots, and Atlanta's just a way better offensive team than compared to the Knicks. I think they have players who can hit big shots down the stretch of games. On the other side of the spectrum, the Knicks are a great defensive team who will defend Atlanta as well as anyone in those possessions. And they also have Julius Randle, who has also been a good closer this season. So I would understand if you disagree with me on this point, but I just feel like Trae Young and the Hawks will step up down the stretch of these games, and I have more faith in them to close games out than I do with the Knicks. But to conclude the video, if I have to predict who I think will win the series, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Hawks in a very close 6-game series. The main reason I'm going to go with the Hawks is because in the postseason, I personally have more faith in offensive teams that are a bit below average on defense rather than great defensive teams who are terrible on offense. And despite me saying it will be 6 games, I honestly think the series will be very close and have some of the best games in the postseason. But I will say that I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks won this because of their great defense and their grittiness. And if this series goes to a Game 7 in the Madison Square Garden, I honestly think that if it goes to Game 7, New York will win the series. That's all I'll say. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with what I said in this video. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and to reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video, start a conversation with me, as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.